Hello, welcome back to the show. My name's Irrelevant. This is Do All the Things, and on today's episode, Soviet military surplus vacuum tubes. Ha ha. Are they any good? Well, let's talk about this. Yes. You know, I find myself shopping around for different tones. That is the way of the tube connoisseur. Every now and then, regardless of whether or not your tubes are worn out, well, you want to see what other sounds are out there. It's the way tube amps work. I got more tubes than I technically need because I don't replace them when they wear out. I just hey, I feel like trying a set of these today. What's the flavor of the month? That kind of thing. And I forget how I ended up down this rabbit hole, but I was booting around the Bay of Ease there, and I stumbled upon listings for Russian vacuum tubes. And I knew these existed, but I never really put much thought into them because, well, how good can they be, right? But then I saw that they were cheap, very cheap. And for the price of retubing, like maybe half the price of retubing a proper amp, I was able to buy all this, and there's even some duplicates that are missing from this display right here. So we'll start off with maybe some of the meh ones, like these guys right here. 5U4Cs, rectifier tubes. I couldn't find a straight answer on a data sheet for them, but they have identical pinouts to your 5U4, your 5AR4, GZ34, whatever you want to call them, but apparently they're similar to the 5Y3. Now, if you compare them against a 5AR4 and a 5U4, they look not all that big. They don't look like they have a whole heck of a lot going for them. Apparently, it's similar to a 5Y3, but with less voltage drop, so maybe a little bit better than a 5Y3. But I wanted to see them. I wanted to try them. I don't know that I'm going to be dropping them into any big power heads that I'd put the other tubes in, but hey, you know what it's perfect for? Especially this cute little Coke bottle looking one. Project Overdrive, my custom overdrive pedal, where I only have to rectify for but 112AX7, so it looks good in here and it works well. Moving along, we got these guys right here. Now, I'm not sure my motivation for buying these because I haven't got any amps that I could possibly use with them yet. Surely I'm going to be cloning or building something at some point, but these are 6P43P- E. They are very, very similar to an EL84. They have a damn near identical pinout, and specifications seem to be similar also. You know, good luck. I wasn't really able to find an English schematic, but you know, if we read between the lines, we got about 12 watts dissipation, a max voltage of 500 to 550, but that's kind of like an idle voltage. It's talking about a working voltage of about 300 volts. So again, similar to the EL84, though the one amp I have that will take an EL34, they didn't work, but that's because that amp is wired so frigging weird. I'm sure I'm going to be able to mod them to fit. I was thinking of trying to use these as voltage regulator tubes, actually, kind of like a sacrificial lamb because they were so darn cheap. Because I acquired a couple of these puppers right here, RY29, aka GU29, aka an FU29, or we could say a FU29. But this, oh, look at that thing. Would you just look at it? Looks straight out of Fallout or Space Saucer. Like, it definitely kind of has a Soviet vibe to it compared to other tubes. And you're gonna see it's got two elements inside of it. This is like a pentode or a beam power tetrode, but two of them in one. Rated for a total of 40 watts, or it says 40 watts. I don't know if that's 40 watts a section or 40 watts total. I'm inclined to believe 40 watts total because I'm not sure if my hand does good scale, but those are small. Those don't look anywhere near close to 40 watt dissipation. So I guess it's kind of like having two 6v6s in one. Apparently it's similar to a tube called the 829B, if I remember that correctly, which is a more common tube. And indeed, if we look at the specifications, it's interesting. So we have a maximum anode of 750. So this is gonna sit in the proper range to run in a modern guitar amp, except the grid voltage is 224 5. So we need the screen grid voltage to come down there. Now there's a lot of tubes on the market that state a low grid voltage, but then we still just kind of stick them into our amps and feed them normal grid voltage and they work just fine. I have half a mind because of the price point to YOLO bomb this into an amp and see how it works. Otherwise, I need to bring that voltage down somehow, and I was thinking of using one of these puppers right here to act as a regulator. I may or may not do that. At some point I'm going to proof of concept this, so stay tuned. I am going to do something to get these things running in a guitar amp because I've always wanted to put a strange tube in a guitar amp before. I'm talking about power tubes. Oh, what are these? 6N3Cs or 6P3Cs. These are advertised on the Bay of Ease as being roughly equivalent to a 6L6 tube, a Russian 6L6, but we have to call shenanigans on that because they have a maximum voltage rating of about 350 volts and a wattage rating of 20. Oh, frick, look at this archaic. Oh, they might actually only have a maximum voltage of 250 actually. Or no, maybe like 400. Either way, if you bias these and set them up as a 6L6, they red plate. However, I've tested them in my various amplifiers and I've gotten them to work just fine, provided I bias based on 20 watts on that amp. Anything higher, starts glowing. Now, power tubes are always fascinating because they, add a lot of taste to your tone. And there's a reason why I got these, and I was curious about them because they reminded me of the Shugang 6L6GC. I have a couple, I guess these are considered NOS now, but I have a couple of these things in damn near new low hours. I'm afraid to use them because I can't replace them. And they're not the best sounding tube in the world, but they have an interesting tone to them, like this certain airiness in the high end that I get out of no other power tube. It adds kind of like this subtle but not obnoxious buzz or fuzz kind of to the tone that I actually kind of like and I want to experiment more with, but I whenever I have a tube like this that I can't get any more of, I'm just, no thank you. But if you look inside at the internals, they are extremely similar. That's what I noticed. So I'm like, okay, maybe these tubes have that sound, and well, guess what? They do. Not only do they have this sound, but to my listening tests, they maybe sound a little bit more better than the Shugangs. I think I'm going to be happy with these tubes, even though they're not that useful. It's almost like you'd need 4 tubes in a 2-tube amp to make them really... But hey, I do most of my playing at low volumes because I'm just noodling around in my room, so a 40-watt amp is more than enough. Just, you have to bias them cold. It's tricky. And they're NOS, and this particular seller, he matches them. So this is a match set. And indeed, like this pair here, they're within like 1 or 2 milliamps of each other. They're really close. So, enter the more interesting, debatably the feature presentation of this video. This right here, my friends, is the 6N2P. Or is it 6N? 6P2. The Cyrillic characters, so yeah, 6N2P. The 6N2P is essentially a 12AX7, which you can put in any modern tube amp and it will work like a 12AX7, except for one cavat, the pinout, which is almost exactly identical except for the heaters. So a 12AX7, we got 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 are your 2 triodes, but then we have, one side of the heater goes to pin 9 and the other goes to 4 and 5, but not the 6N2P. You see, the 12AX7 is a 12 volt tube that you can wire the heaters in parallel and run it at 6 volts. It's modular that way, but the 6N is straight up a 6 volt tube and it connects to 4 and 5. You have to disconnect your heater from pin 9 and bring it over here somewhere, which if you can wire up the sockets on your amp is a super easy mod to do, theoretically. A little bit small and surgical, but easy. If you have a PCB based amp, well, it's going to require significant more ingenuity. However, you can get adapters. I purchased a 4-pack of these things, which is the minimum amount of required, and now I kind of wish I had more of them so I can do more experimenting, but these are just basic socket adapters. I got these ones because they're thin. I wanted to make sure they were going to fit inside of the base of a tube shield, whereas some of the other adapters, they seem a bit fatter. But these basically adapt your heater from the 12AX7 standard to the 6N2P standard, and then you can just drop these right in. In fact, these adapters cost more than the tubes themselves. That's the only catch why I don't have more of them. And you can only get them direct from like China and stuff, so it's gonna take a while to come in, but that's the case for everything. So right here, 6N2P. Look at that guy. Look in there. Got some holes. They have like little windows into their soul. You can watch them glow from the inside. A little bit more of a light show than some modern production tubes. But this is your basic 6N2P. This is the first iteration. There's actually two different kinds. Well, there's a few bit more than two different kinds, but I picked up two different kinds. Seen here are 6N2P EVs. And if you look at these guys start looking a lot more like a modern preamp tube. In fact, their plate arrangement looks a lot like a Sovtek WA. Well, I would not be surprised that a Sovtek is very similar to a known Soviet tube. We have a date of April 1983. Brand new, NOS. So the 6N2P and the 6N2P EV are, they do have differences, but to my listening test, they're similar. So maybe the normal one has a bit more grind. Now, EV stands for E as in extended life. Apparently they're rated for no less than 1,000 hours, and the B or V is for vibration resistance. So they're supposed to be anti-microphonic. I guess these ones are more susceptible to microphonic or will come looser over time, whereas these ones are more robustly designed. Wonder how that compares to modern designs. Since that looks kind of like a Sovtek, I would guess every preamp tube in this day and age would be considered an EV. 1,000 hours though. Really? Somehow I doubt that in a guitar amp. Guitar amps kind of torture tubes. Now, there is a little bit more. Another very similar tube is the 6N1P, also an EV rated. Oh, this guy says 1977 on it. Ho, 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 ho. Apparently this has matched sections, so that's excellent for a phase inverter, theoretically, or audiophile. Bit more than you need to worry about for a guitar amp. You don't need matched preamp tubes for guitar amps. In fact, mismatches, is some will say, enhances the sweetness of the tone because that's where certain harmonic distortions get brought out. Now, the 6N2P is a full 12AX7, so it's going to have your amplification factor of like 100, the moo, if you will. Whereas this guy is rated for a moo of about 33. It's more of a driver tube, not necessarily your typical preamp tube. That kind of puts it in the same realm as the AY7, AV7. I could see it being a technical substitute to that, but more moo than a 12AU7. It has been compared to the 6DJ8. I got this to be like a kind of phase inverter tube to try for that position because I like different tubes in my phase inverter than I do in my preamp. I like something that's more transparent in the phase inverter. They have a more different design to them. You got this nice flare. They don't have a box. They just kind of have the sandwich of plates, and you can see the grid in there. Then there's one other preamp type tube that I acquired because I heard it's supposed to sound real good, even though I may never fully experience that tone because a guitar amp wiring doesn't really implement it correctly. The 6N6P, look at that guy. Compare it to a normal tube. Got these big plates. It kind of reminds me of a 6CG7, 6GC7. So many names to remember. It's got these big gaps in the side, also matched section. Now this is gonna have a mu of about 22. That's 6 more in the close to 12 AU7, and that's kind of what this is. It's supposed to be a good transparent driver tube. It's making its way into audiophile amps. But a guitar amp, well, it does add some interesting tonal value. The only caveat is the low mu means it's not really gonna work for a distortion preamp, and in buffer phase inverter driver stages, it works well, but you drop a lot of volume, like a lot of volume. So now that I've walked you through what we have to work with here, let's try some of these guys out. Set up over in the lock of the bay over here, we got your industry standard guitar amp, Marshall JCM 800, and I can't debate whether I want to use my custom overdrive or my Malmsteen pedal. I'll start with the Malmsteen for now. Consistent, repeatable results. So what do I got for flavors right now in the JCM 800 for our reference? Well, a couple of my favorite configurations in here, one of them being, in the preamp, we got a pair of JJ803S's. Slightly darker tone, takes some of the harshness out of the bright, but they have really good mid-frequency definition. In our phase inverter, a Sovtek 5751 also helps smooth things out, very balanced sounding tube with a fat low end. Can actually warm things up. And then for power tubes, the flavor of the month I've been running in this guy for the last little while, Tunxol 7581As, 35 watt tubes. They're 6L6s on steroids. Not quite a 6550, but in the similar realm. So let's hear what my Marshall typically sounds like. Let's put some, let's say, 6N 2P EVs in the preamp. So for tube rolling the JCM 800, you got two different phases going on with those preamp tubes. The phase inverter, we're gonna leave the 5751 in there right now for reference standard, but you know, your distortion texture is gonna be coming off those two first positions. In this case, the 803S's. Let's swap them out, the 6N 2P EVs. Come on now. Noise isn't any different. So the harmonics feel about the same. The high end adds a touch of airiness to it, a little bit more, but not obnoxiously so. Sometimes when a preamp tube gets brighter, it gets a bit too brighter. The mid definition is like completely just as good as the 803S, and the 803S to my ears has some of the most defined mids that I can put in a high gain amp. Now, truth be told, I pre-tested this already and like I was impressed. Maybe a little less warmth, just to say. Some nice crunch though. We got some nice crunch going down. You can hear the and those quick little a lot clearer, and it sounds tight. If only my playing was as tight as these tubes. All right, let's move on to the standard 6N 2Ps. Supposedly a downgrade. All right. Noise-wise, sounds a bit identical, but then, you know, that's the overdrive doing its thing. Okay, so the high end is just slightly more bite than the EVs, but still has enough airiness for those tick 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 chugs to like crunch nice. The crunch is there. They have a similar crunch factor. They have a satisfying crunch, but they're warmer. There's more low end, more low end and more mid, but like a good mid with more roar, more like roar. They have more of a roar to them. I might actually like the sound of them better in this amp than the EVs. Even though the EVs are technically superior, maybe they could be reserved for a V1 position in an even higher gain amp. Maybe they'd be good in the phase inverter. I don't know. They sound like they might, I don't know. But, I like this. I liked it. Also, the harmonics are cleaner and jump a little bit better. That's what's weird, you know, you'd think a harmonic is a harmonic, but sometimes when you have your amp dialed in just right, it's like they jump off the fingerboard. I kind of want to keep playing. You know, sometimes when you hit a sound that's really working for you don't want to put down the guitar. Okay, what next? What do we want to do next here? So we have these 6N1P, which I bought with the intention of being a phase inverter tube. So let's see how that works. Even though, should I go back to my 803Ss as reference sample, or should I just leave those guys in there? Well, yeah, let's just go. Phase Inverter. Okay, so I feel like I'm missing a bit of low end, but then the 5751 is a warm sounding tube, so the mid stayed defined. It's maybe got a little bit more brightness and crunch than it did with the 5751. The 5751's a smooth sounding tube. Okay, let us try another 6N2P in that phase inverter, because they are warmer sounding. Oh, there's definitely more low. Like, not like in your face so, but it's warmer sounding. Like, sometimes the low load mids, they come out in note definition. If you're missing too much low mid, you can, like, when you do those chugs, like the you don't hear the note because it's kind of diminished. But if you have just the right low mid texture, actually there's enough extra low there that some of the I can hear stuff around the room vibrating a little bit more. Well, what happens if we try the 6N2P EV in the phase inverter, knowing it's not as warm but smoother sounding? Now, if you haven't noticed this about me already, I'm a preamp topology kind of guy. I'm not interested in the cranked amp tone. I'm interested in my power sections staying tight and clean. That's the reason why I use 35 watt tubes, so that they have headroom, so they don't distort. I'm not really particularly interested in phase inverter distortion either. I'm all about that master volume. I hear a bit more sparkle. It is smoother. We did lose some low end though. I don't think I like it as much as the other 6N2P. So far, the 6N2Ps are winning over the 6N2P EVs in this particular amp. Okay, so how about the 6N6P? Useless in the preamp, but might it be a good phase inverter tube? Now the first thing we notice is a massive drop in volume. That tube doesn't have anywhere near as much gain. So that could have advantages, disadvantages. If you're in the recording environment or noodling at home kind of thing, you want to keep the volume down, it's gonna make your master volume less touchy. Also gonna push that power section a little bit less hard. It feels like I scooped the mids. The highs are really jumping out. It almost sounds like it's brighter, but then it sounds like the lows are lower too. It makes me want to turn up the mids and turn down the highs. Okay, so the 6N6P. Now, based on some of the research I've done online, we would have to do some recalibration to the amps to get the most out of it. I believe the tube is sounding thin right now because it's not set up, biased, all that stuff, calibrated properly for that circuit. Most of the circuits, they use a lot less than the value of anode resistor that we typically see in the preamp circuits of a guitar amp. So, being the kind of tube it is, it probably could be set up to be like an awesome sauce phase inverter for a guitar amp, but it might require some adjustments. In the meantime, it does add a whole heck of a lot of extra brightness. When I was playing with it before, the vibe that I got is that if you want to be able to turn your amp down right low so that at bedroom volume levels you can enjoy the sound of a large head, this would be a tube that would do you a service. That extra high is going to push through the darkness of speakers that aren't moving, the fact that the juice just isn't flowing, and of course the cut in gain means the master volume is going to be less sensitive. So, I gotta put my 5751 back in for reference. I'm gonna leave those 6N2Ps in the preamp, but right after we get reference, let's try those power tubes and see what happens. 5751 going in, oh, it's gonna be way louder now. 5751 has profoundly more low end though. That's one thing I've always noticed about that tube. If you want more out of your amp, stick a Sovtech 5751 in the phase inverter. Okay, so power tube. First thing I want to do is check my bias meter. I want to crank my bias all the way down, as low as it's going to go. And I'll let us remove the ones that are in there. Oh yeah. The insulted glove. Insulted. It's a misspelling of insulated. But it's insulted that I always make it grab such hot things. It's actually a normal weather work glove with like a fleece mitt in it. All right. 6P. P3Cs going in. So this amplifier runs at about 470 volts. I know it says 460 on the back, I was incorrect. 20 watt dissipation, trust me. Divided by 470, we're looking at a max of 42 milliamps. Now if we multiply that by 0.7, 29 is our max. We're already at 23, so we haven't got quite enough bias for this. Check our balance, 19 on that one, 23 on that one. Okay, this match is a little off. So we'll bring her up to about 29. Except we gotta watch for red plating. Can you even hear me? All right, what do these sound like? Crunch City. It's like all these Russian tubes, they just have this bright bias to them, this treble bias. There's a certain low-end warmth too that it differs from the 7581s. So you would definitely want these in a darker amp, not a brighter amp. I almost find they're maybe a bit too bright for this amp. I can see them being good in the Jubilee. I almost want to go back to the 803Ss, which are darker. We're piling bright on bright on bright here. That's not always a good thing. Maybe if with a darker preamp and these brighter tubes in the power amp, that might balance back out. You know what? Let's try my tube overdrive here. It is slightly warmer sounding than the Malmsteen. Oh, I hear a strange noise. I don't know about the quality control in these tubes. I hear a balance conflict. One tube's 27, the other tube's 24. No, that's fine. Why would I be getting that hum out of it? So my tube overdrive is slightly less harmonic. That's something I actually want to sort out, but it's warmer sounding. Now, one great thing about Project Overdrive here is that it only uses a half of one triode. That gave me the ability to custom wire this socket in such a way that I can just hot drop in one of these Soviet tubes. The first one I grabbed was the 6N1P, which is, I don't know how well we're gonna be driving our amp with that drop in gain. We got some microphonic. That's actually more gain than I was expecting. Actually, I got some decent rock toads out of that, I think. This is an actual gain knob. What this does is it kind of balances, I don't know how to explain it. This allows us to simulate the effect of what these tubes... Oh boy, did you hear that blink? What these tubes would sound like in a V1 position. So we need to go into a proper neighborhood here, bud. 6N2P EV, good candidate for V1. And of course, obviously, this rectifier is working well. Notice, no microphonics with this guy. Quiet. Oh, that sounds actually pretty good, man. Especially with that low noise floor. Like, it's... Wow. I can hit that thing hard and nothing. I need to clean up the harmonics on this thing. Okay, so we know for distortion tones, maybe we like the plain 6N2P a little bit better. Ooh, what's that gonna be like, bud? Oh, is this tube defective? So, okay, let's reference sample here. Wow, get out of there. Do I have a defective tube? I'm gonna have to compare. Let's grab a different one. Noisy. Okay, these guys are definitely noisier. That's a high sensitivity V1 position. And there's microphonics. Tone though, oh boy, we're adding more of that mid warmth and grind to the sound, and a tighter low end. But holy frick, is it noisy as, holy buddy, what's going on with you? Okay, so let's do a sanity check here. If you can hear me over this, holy. The ones that are in the amp are running quietly, but you know, those aren't going to be as high gain. So let's do a swapski here and see if maybe it's those that are noisy. Huh, weird noise. Oh, we might have a couple bad tubes. Okay, what's going on with this noise? Okay, no, noise is normalized. We have one of those 6N2Ps in here. It's not making crazy noises. I put a 6N2P EV. I might have a couple bad tubes here. I'm gonna have to experiment some more. Well, the noise testing I will do on my own time. Hey, my eyes are down here, but wow. Okay. You know, the power tubes are but the preamp tubes, wow. Maybe that's why people fuss over NOS tubes. And these are NOS tubes. And usually I am vehemently against NOS tubes on the sentiment that, maybe you find a pair, maybe you find some and it makes your sound, but then, they're gonna wear out. How are you gonna get more of them? They don't make them anymore and everybody else is buying them up because of the holy grail. If you go on the Bay of Ease, you can find replacement tubes in the NOS, or they call them NOS, but really they're used. Tested strong, they say. Yeah, I have all sorts of tubes that I've pulled out of old amps over the years that test strong and functionally. If you drop them in there, they work. But, you give them a little tappy, they sound like a bucket of bolts falling down the frickin' stairs. Tight tones come from tight tubes. And a fresh, current production tube, in my opinion, sounds better than a worn out old tube. It all depends on the tone you're going for. But I don't find NOS tubes are sustainable, especially if they're common values like a 12AX7. If you do find them actual NOS, actual brand new, they go for $100 or more. These guys though, oh boy, you can literally buy cases of these guys for the price of like 2 or 3 common production 12AX7s. And maybe you get that NOS tone, because certainly I have been surprised today by these preamp tubes. I want more of them. I want to recommend them to people. If their amps can be modded, I want to say, hey bud, let me poke around in there and show you what you can really do. But that said, you can get adapters. Do I recommend you try these? Oh frick yeah bud. But maybe no, I don't. Because then that's more for me. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. I have more stuff coming with, these Russian tubes. This pretty much covers the power and preamp tubes, but this guy right here, it came from outer space and it's going into one of my amps. That's gonna be the Russian tube experiment. And I get a kick out of that. There's other tubes in the future that I think I'm gonna try to shoehorn in amps, but hey, stay tuned. Stay tuned. I'm gonna have to contact that seller about those noisy tubes.